Most players think they're safe playing the Queen's Gambit, but when they run into the Schara Gambit, they're in for total chaos. This is one of the sharpest and rarest weapons you can play as black. Let's break it down. White starts with pawn to d4, and black responds with pawn to d5. Now comes pawn to c4, the classic Queen's Gambit, and black plays pawn to e6, keeping things flexible. White develops naturally with knight to c3. But instead of the usual quiet stuff, black now plays pawn to c5. This is the Teresh defense, and it's about to get wild. White captures with pawn takes on d5. And here black enters the Schara Gambit with pawn takes on d4, pushing deep into white's territory. White grabs the free pawn with queen takes d4, and black replies with knight to c6, gaining tempo and threatening that queen. Here almost 7,000 people have took the knight that just loses the queen. The queen retreats to d1, and now black recaptures in the center with pawn takes d5. White goes for queen takes d5 again, and black plays queen to c7, another tempo, and setting up serious counterplay. White brings out knight to f3, developing naturally. Black responds with knight to f6, kicking the queen with tempo. The queen goes back to d1, and now comes bishop to b4, putting pressure on the knight and pinning. White develops bishop to d2, and black castles kingside, getting to safety and preparing for more pressure. White plays pawn to e3, but black answers with rook to d8, putting the rook directly on the queen in central file. White tries to untangle with queen to c2, but black says nope, bishop to g4, adding tension and keeping white tied down. White finally develops the light-squared bishop to e2, but black jumps in with knight to e5, centralizing and creating tactical threats. White captures with knight takes knight, and black immediately takes back with bishop takes e5, keeping initiative and opening the center. White recaptures with the king, giving up castling rights, and black finishes the sequence with queen takes e5, up in development and initiative. This is just the beginning. What if white plays the engine move of queen to a forecheck? No problem, even with perfect play, black's initiative doesn't stop. Here is how it unfolds. White gives a check early with queen to a4. Black blocks cleanly with bishop to d7. The queen grabs the loose pawn with queen takes d4, but black doesn't care. They go ahead with pawn takes pawn in the center. White takes again with queen takes d5, but black develops fast with knight to f6, hitting the queen. White retreats the queen to d1, and now black plays bishop to c5, putting pressure on the board and preparing to castle. White plays knight to f3, and black castles kingside without hesitation. White tries to stabilize with pawn to e3, but black activates the queen with queen to e7, keeping the initiative flowing. White brings out the bishop to e2. Black lines up pressure with rook to d8. After white castles, black brings out bishop to f5, almost everything developed and zero weaknesses. White tries to swing the queen to a4, but black calmly plays knight to c6. Then comes queen to h4, trying to stir up something on the king side, but black says let's go rook to c8. White reinforces with rook to d1. Black jumps in with knight to e5, central pressure building. White brings their knight to d4, and black trades with bishop takes knight. White recaptures with rook takes d4, and now comes bishop to d3. White trades bishops, and black recaptures with knight takes d3. Finally, after rook takes d8 and rook takes d8, we reach a clean and active position. Black's development is smoother, their pieces are better placed, and the initiative is still in their hands. What if white tries to dodge the Schara Gambit with quiet moves? Doesn't help, black just takes over. Watch how this solid line crumbles. White plays it safe with knight to f3, avoiding the gambit. Black responds with pawn takes pawn, and after knight takes back, black strikes immediately with pawn to e5. The knight retreats to f3, and black grabs the center with pawn to d4. White tries to challenge with knight to d5, but black just develops knight to f6. Now white captures the central pawn with knight takes pawn, but black trades with knight takes knight, and white recaptures with pawn takes. Black wastes no time, queen takes pawn in the center. White develops the knight to f3 again, and black hits the board with knight to c6. Now comes pawn to e3 from white, and black calmly develops with bishop to f5. White plays bishop to d2, but that only allows more space. Black trades in the center with pawn takes pawn. White captures with f-pawn, and now black plays bishop to c5, aiming at f2. White brings the rook to c1 to cover the file, and black castles kingside into a comfortable position. White develops bishop to c4, but black continues with queen to d6, centering everything and preparing the final touches. After white castles, black activates the last piece, rook to d8. Everything's in place, no weaknesses, and black has a lasting edge. If you liked this breakdown, check out the full Chess Opening Guides playlist. It's packed with dangerous prep. And let me know in the comments which openings you want covered next.